I ended my relationship with the woman I loved because her sister's ex-husband persuaded me that her family was full of liars. Later, I discovered that he was abusing his new wife and hospitalized her using a throwaway account because several coworkers knew my main account. I'd prefer not to have this situation follow me around the office. All names are changed here to prevent them from being discovered. I'm 34 years old and work for a mid-sized company in Chicago. 3 years ago, my parents began pressuring me to think about an arrangement. My career was going well, and I had recently received a promotion and a sizable raise, but my personal life was a complete mess after months of my mother sending me profiles of suitable women and my father making overt suggestions that he wanted grandchildren before he died. I had gone through a string of failed relationships, including one that ended with my girlfriend cheating on me with my roommate, another that ended when I found out she was still married, and a third that ended after 6 months because she wanted to move to California and I refused to leave Chicago. Kick the bucket, I grudgingly consented to meet some of these pre-screened candidates, and my mother was thrilled and set up 5 meetings in 2 weeks. The first woman brought her mother, who spent the entire time questioning me about my finances and family medical history. The second spent our entire coffee date texting someone else. The third was pleasant, but we had nothing in common at all. She was a devoted religious person, and I hadn't visited a house of worship in more than 10 years. And the fourth, we clicked, but she later acknowledged I was ready to give up on the whole arranged marriage idea after several awkward meetings and forced conversations with women I didn't connect with. Then my father's friend mentioned his colleague's daughter, Lisa, who is different. He said she's smart as a whip and has a good head on her shoulders. There was no pressure to meet her. We met at a restaurant downtown on a rainy evening. I arrived early, ordered a coffee to calm my nerves, and braced myself for another wasted evening. She arrived 20 minutes later. She was soaking wet despite her umbrella, wearing a simple blue dress with no jewelry or makeup, and her natural appearance immediately drew my attention. She apologized profusely for being late, explaining that her Uber driver had taken the wrong turn and become stuck in traffic. The conversation flowed naturally, unlike the stilted small talk of my previous scheduled meetings. She had a sharp sense of humor, making jokes about the ridiculousness of our scheduled meeting situation, and we both had similar musical tastes, loving classic rock bands that none of our friends enjoyed. Had visited 17 countries on 4 continents for work and pleasure. When I mentioned that I had a dream of seeing the Northern Lights in Iceland, she took out her phone and showed me pictures from her trip there the previous winter. 4 hours and several courses later, we were still chatting when the restaurant staff started to close up around us. Unlike other planned arrangements, Lisa insisted on a lengthy time to get to know each other before a formal engagement. She said that marriage isn't something to jump into immediately. At our second meeting over brunch at a cafe by the lake, Lisa told me about her family's complicated history. Celia had gone through a bitter divorce that involved accusations of domestic violence against her ex-husband Aaron. The legal battle dragged on for almost 6 years, costing them money and social standing, and finally, they withdrew the case and settled privately when the emotional and financial toll became too much to bear. Her parents agreed with this approach, but I noticed that her older sister, Celia, watched me with obvious suspicion whenever I visited their home. This made me pause because domestic violence cases can get messy, and I would rather not get involved with a family that might bring legal troubles or drama into my life. Lisa explained this plainly, not hiding anything, even mentioning that the experience had made her cautious about relationships. Celia changed after that marriage, she said, saying she used to be the life of every party, always laughing, but now she's more guarded, especially around men she doesn't know well. Don't take it personally. Often devolved into arguments about old grievances, but Lisa seems so different from what I had imagined such a family would be like. She is calm, career-focused, and truly kind. After thinking about it for a few days, I decided that her family's past didn't define her, and we kept seeing each other as our relationship developed over the next 9 months. She met my high school friends, who welcomed her into our long-standing group right away, and I even met her college friends, who shared embarrassing stories about her undergraduate. Aaron worked for the same banking corporation as me, but in the New York office while I was in Chicago. I never met him in person, but I could easily find out about him through company directories and mutual connections. Most coworkers described him as aggressive but effective and a bit of a jerk. Celia, on the other hand, kept her distance but was courteous enough when our paths crossed at these gatherings, although Aaron taught me how to make proper tea and always sent me home with containers of homemade food. Despite my growing feelings for Lisa, 2 things continued to bother me: Celia's cold demeanor and the rumors about her that occasionally made their way to my ears. Several of Lisa's cousins had mentioned at various gatherings that Celia had always been too modern, and he had a reputation for taking credit for subordinates' work and throwing people under the bus when projects failed. Nothing particularly glowing, but nothing that screamed abuser. Even before her marriage, Celia was rebellious. One particularly gossipy person cornered me at a family birthday party and called Celia a radical feminist who couldn't keep a husband. Another relative also implied that Celia had Western ideas that don't work in real marriages. These remarks, along with the information about the domestic violence case, sowed the seeds of doubt that grew over time. I never confronted Lisa about these concerns, in part because I didn't want to offend her and partly because I wasn't sure how to let her know I was worried. When I told a colleague from the New York office that I was seeing someone from Chicago whose sister used to be married to someone in our company, he asked for her name. When I mentioned Lisa and explained the connection to Aaron, his eyebrows shot up. By the end of the day, word had spread throughout the office grapevine, and Aaron had somehow managed to get my phone number and called me that evening. I kept these thoughts to myself even though they were growing. After I got back to my hotel, he talked for almost an hour about how Celia was abusive and manipulative, saying she had violent outbursts frequently and had physically attacked him several times during their marriage. He also claimed that she had made up the whole domestic violence case after he caught her cheating with a coworker, and her entire family closed ranks around her. He claimed that while they were good at projecting this perfect image to outsiders, behind closed doors the following day, Aaron sent me videos and screenshots via email. One video showed Celia screaming obscenities and throwing objects at someone off camera, while another showed her yelling at what appeared to be Aaron's parents, calling them interfering and controlling the situation. Aaron was convincing in his story, which was detailed and consistent, and he also had the advantage of directly addressing my unspoken concerns about Celia's behavior and the family dynamics I had witnessed. Threats and abusive language were found in Celia's text messages, which included statements like "I'll destroy your career," and "You'll regret the day you met me." Aaron claimed in his follow-up call that her entire family took care of her, with her father making excuses about her being passionate or going through a difficult time, her mother literally and figuratively cleaning up the messes, and Lisa being the worst, constantly defending her sister's behavior and gaslighting me when I tried to defend myself. I must have appeared distracted because Lisa repeatedly asked if something was wrong, and I dismissed it with a claim of work stress. The breaking point came after a dinner at her parents' house when the conversation shifted to a news story. I returned to Chicago with these images and conversations still fresh in my mind, and the next time I saw Lisa for a routine dinner date, I was unable to concentrate on anything she said. I wondered if her entire family was concealing their true selves from me. About workplace harassment, Celia said that men can't handle strong women and that they turn to bullying when they feel threatened. Something struck me as evidence that Aaron was right, and I barely participated in the conversation. The remainder of the dinner went by quickly, and after we left, I drove Lisa to a park by the lake rather than taking her home as planned. She seemed perplexed but didn't object, so I parked the car in an empty lot and confronted her. Poured out like a dam breaking after months of pressure, I called her family manipulators and liars, accusing them of hiding Celia's actions and making up accusations against an innocent man. I detailed the videos and messages, saying that I couldn't marry into a family that would use false accusations to manipulate the legal system because a marriage didn't work out. I called her mother complicit in maintaining their family's false image, and I called her father weak for failing to better control his daughters. Lisa looked at me. She gathered her belongings and opened the car door after this tirade, saying, "Congratulations on that. Don't call me again, don't message me, and don't contact my family just off." She slammed the door and walked away, taking her phone with her as she called an Uber. I sat in the car for almost 2 hours before driving home, replaying the conversation and feeling more and more righteous because I had avoided a bullet. My father stopped talking to me for weeks, leaving the room whenever I walked in. My sister called me a fool and said I had the emotional intelligence of a rock. Friends who had met Lisa stopped inviting me to gatherings, and one bluntly told me I had blown it for 10 months. I tried to move on, but I went back to the arranged marriage route, meeting 12 women chosen by my increasingly desperate friends. I told myself I had discovered the truth just in time, but the fallout was brutal. In contrast to what I had experienced with Lisa, I made profiles on 3 different dating apps, went on 27 first dates, and even briefly dated a coworker. All of these women were objectively attractive, successful, and interested in me, but every time the conversation felt forced, the connection felt hollow. One woman even called me out after our 3rd date. "You're not over someone. I can tell by the way you end conversations and compare everything to some invisible standard." Before wasting more people's time, she left me sitting alone. While enjoying drinks with coworkers from different branch offices 2 weeks ago, someone brought up a scandal at the New York location. Aaron's name was mentioned, and when I asked for more information, a senior manager who had worked closely with Aaron revealed that Aaron's wife, Angela, had filed domestic violence charges against him after he sent her to the hospital with 3 broken ribs and a concussion. This time, there was concrete proof, as hospital records showed numerous prior incidents and witness statements from after a business event. Aaron was suspended pending investigation, and the firm was removing his name from the website and reassigning all of his clients. I excused myself from the table, claiming to have a headache, and left the bar right away. For hours, I wandered the streets of downtown Chicago, my mind racing with the implications of everything I had believed. Neighbors who had heard shouting and things breaking regularly even saw security camera footage from their apartment building showing Aaron dragging Angela by her hair through the lobby. Ultimately, I found myself sitting on a bench by the lake at 3 a.m, having misunderstood the situation completely and trusted the word of a man I hardly knew over a woman I claimed to love. I accepted selective evidence without questioning why Aaron would reach out to a stranger to share such personal information in the first place. My phone's battery expired hours ago, and the cold had crept through my work clothes, but I was barely able to watch the pre-dawn light glint off the water. I checked Lisa's social media accounts over the coming days and found that she had blocked me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Spotify, where we used to share playlists. I tried messaging her once from a new Instagram account I made just for this purpose, but got no response and was blocked again within hours. I even drove past her parents' house once in vain, hoping to get a glimpse. All I could think about was the look on Lisa's face as she left my car that night and how completely I had betrayed her trust. In her car, or possibly bumped into her father in the front yard, but the blinds were drawn and nobody came or went during the 2 hours I waited down the street. In desperation, I called her best friend, Tanya, explained the situation, and asked for a chance to apologize to Lisa. I wrote a lengthy message outlining what I had learned about Aaron and how fully I now understood my mistake. Her response was direct and immediate, saying, "I'm finally happy again. Leave her alone before you ruin that too." Yesterday, against all better judgment, she blocked me as well. I sent a message to Lisa's father on Facebook, Sir, disregarding the warnings from friends and family who were aware of my predicament. I recently found out about Aaron's relationship with his current wife, and I now realize how entirely wrong I was about everything. My behavior was unacceptable, and the things I said about you, your wife, and especially Celia were cruel and baseless. I'm not requesting forgiveness or a chance to get back in touch with Lisa. I just wanted to sincerely apologize to you and your family for the hurt I caused. I hope you are all doing well. Lisa unblocked me on WhatsApp this morning. I foolishly opened the app in the hopes of a cordial conversation or at least reconciliation, but instead I saw this message. "You miserable piece, how dare you contact my father? He had a stroke last month, and the last thing he needs is to be reminded of the people who called him a weak man and his daughter a liar. Your apology isn't about making amends, it's about making yourself feel better. Congratulations, you've accomplished everything. Even worse, my mother told me about your message, but my father didn't, so I'm dealing with it while trying to help him get better. If you get in touch with any of us again, I'll file for a restraining order." She blocked me again right away after I read it, and I'd been staring at my apartment's walls for the past 24 hours. I called in sick to work, haven't eaten, haven't taken a shower, and keep reading her message again, seeing the full justification in her rage. The worst part is realizing that I've caused it's been 2 weeks since my last post, and I'm grateful to the thousands of people who called me and left comments. You were all right when you said that I should keep trying, fight for her, or show up at her workplace with flowers. However, the few people who suggested that I do so gave terrible advice, and I'm an even bigger idiot for allowing those comments to influence me. AITA is trying to reconnect and apologize after learning the truth, so I should have just lived with my mistake and left them all alone. After reading hundreds of comments accusing me of being self-centered and telling me to leave Lisa's family alone, I first decided to do just that. I deleted her contact information from my phone, removed all of our photos from my cloud storage, unfollowed mutual friends who might post about her, and tried to concentrate on my work. I even downloaded a meditation app and tried to practice letting go, as several commenters suggested that lasted. This 2-paragraph explanation of why my apology was selfish and performative got me to think for a moment. Exactly 3 days later, on a Friday night, after having a few drinks with a coworker who was going through a breakup of his own, my intoxicated brain concluded that I hadn't made an effort to make amends. This coworker, who was equally inebriated and emotionally raw from his circumstances, encouraged this line of thinking. "If you're truly sorry, you should make sure they know it." He slurred, "Bring another round." Armed with this incredibly foolish advice and 10 whiskeys, I picked up my phone and composed a lengthy email to Lisa's mother detailing my personal growth. To make amends with Lisa, I offered to contribute financially to her husband's medical expenses as a gesture of goodwill. I woke up on Saturday morning with a pounding headache and only dim recollections of sending the email, but checking my sent folder confirmed my revelation about Aaron. I also included screenshots of company emails discussing his suspension and links to news articles about his ongoing legal troubles, as if she wouldn't already be aware of them. In the harsh light of sobriety, the 5 paragraphs of rambling apologies and offers of help read like the desperate attempts of a stalker to keep in touch with his target. At around noon, my phone started ringing with calls from an unknown number, which I initially ignored, thinking it was spam. After the 6th call in 30 minutes, I finally answered, my voice rough from hangover and lack of sleep. And it was Celia, Lisa's sister, the woman I had effectively called a lying, abusive manipulator who had falsely accused her ex-husband of domestic abuse. Violence, pay close attention because I'm only going to say this once. There was no emotion or anger at all. Everything she said was cold and precise. My father is in physical therapy, learning to walk again after a stroke, and my mother is juggling helping to run the house and taking care of him because she can no longer be there full time. Lisa has finally stopped looking at your social media and crying over what you did, and now you're emailing my mother to ask for coffee. I tried to explain that I was intoxicated when I sent the email, but she interrupted me before I could finish my first sentence, saying, I've spent 10 years dealing with men like you and Aaron who think their feelings matter more than everyone else's. Men who cause damage and then expect forgiveness on their timeline. Men who cannot comprehend that other people's lives don't revolve around their need for absolution. Here's what's going to happen. You will never contact anyone in my family again, not even my parents, Lisa, our cousins or our friends, or via email, social media, or mutual if you do, acquaintances. I will personally file a harassment claim against you, contact your employer with documentation of your behavior, and make this public. Do you understand? I was able to say yes before she hung up. But later that day, I received an email from her account that included screenshots of my drunken message to their mother. She copied Lisa and their parents, and to my utter horror, my parents were included in the email. The message simply stated that it was for documentation purposes that their mother called within minutes, and I was more furious than I had ever heard her. My mother had received a polite but firm message from Lisa's mother asking them not to contact her family again. Your father and I raised you better than this, she said, adding that the poor man is recovering from a stroke and you're bothering his wife with drunken emails offering money like their charity cases. This is why my father had stayed in touch with Lisa's parents after the breakup, in part. After all, they had become true friends during our relationship and in part because they always hoped we would get back together. When she arrived at my apartment that evening after my mother had called her in tears, she discovered me sitting in the dark, still wearing only a week's worth of clothes, surrounded by takeout containers and empty beer bottles. Rather than offering me consolation or sympathetic platitudes, she turned on all the lights, opened the windows, and began cleaning up, while calling me every conceivable word for pathetic and selfish. She then forced me to remove all traces of communication with Lisa and her family, blocking their social media profiles and deleting their contact information from my phone. While intoxicated, she took my laptop and erased all of my photos of Lisa, including the ones I had hidden in obscure folders. She asked me to get professional help because removing the last beer from my refrigerator and pouring it down the sink isn't about Lisa anymore. It's about you not understanding boundaries and becoming a creep. If you were a stranger doing this, we'd all be angry. Media accounts also deleted their email addresses from my contact list and even installed some parental control software that prevents me from accessing their profiles or sending messages to their accounts. After I explained my repeated attempts to get in touch with Lisa and her family, she said, "This isn't love. I've started seeing a therapist twice a week who specializes in relationship issues and addiction, though I'm not sure I qualify as an addict. During our first session, I showed her the original post and all the comments calling me, and she didn't disagree with them. Instead, she asked me to think about why I kept trying to insert myself into the lives of people who had asked me to stay away. I've removed dating apps from my phone and instructed my mother to stop setting up meetings with possible matches because I'm trying to focus on changing my behavior rather than trying to convince Lisa that I've changed. All of this is a result of your ego and your inability to accept that some mistakes can't be fixed and some bridges stay burned. Part of becoming a mature adult is learning to live with the consequences of your actions without expecting the people you've hurt to make you feel better about it. So now, let this serve as a reminder to anyone else who believes they should be forgiven simply because they finally realized their mistake. Occasionally, the greatest way to apologize is to leave someone alone. allowing them to recover without your help.